Welcome to Pastors Conversation. I'm normally in that chair, not this one, but I like this chair better. Ryan, our senior pastor, is here. He's going to be the one on the receiving end. You'll be seeing this a lot. And I get to do what I wanted most to do when we started this whole adventure, and that is ask the questions and draw out. Ryan, great job tonight, my brother. I mean it.
Thank you.
Great job. It was fun to sit there.
Privilege.
You made all the elders look good tonight, bro. Everybody's going, great job, great job. Cool. You know, it was the first time I did nothing, but I went, no, I did do a great job.
You're like, that could have been terrible. And
it was. We won.
All right, fantastic.
All right, I got a couple for you, because part of it was on you, and part of it was on John 4. I have no idea how you're going to answer these, and you have no idea what questions I'm going to ask. What do you think your greatest contribution was to your last church when you look back on 10 years?
Yeah, that's an easy one. It's there are some key staff that are leading that church that I was able to sort of just invest in when they were young interns and grow up into the point where they were fully fledged like pastors on a team, and then to even beyond that to where they're sort of leading, movements of people, that involved 70, 80 other churches. And like, for example, last week down there, they, one of the young men that I've mentored and spent years and years with, from when he was just a knuckleheaded 7th grade boy, he just ran a conference essentially for young adults that had 200 or 300 young adults at it. And it's his thing. That's what he's about. And, he's just to see that guy flourish and grow. That's the only thing that really sticks around. All the rest of it, someone's going to paint over. Someone's going to knock it down one day and be like, why on earth did this moron build a building that looks like this?
Right.
And I was aware of that while I was doing it. I was like, we're building a whole brand new building, and I've spent so much time turning the tools, doing the work, and realizing that someone else is going to come along one day and think, well, they did this wrong. Let's fix it. And that's just it. That's okay. The people, it's different.
Yesterday, I was with a young man that was a pizza deliverer at one of my churches, who I mentored into being the pastor, and has been there 40 years.
So how'd that work? Did he come in to deliver pizza for like a staff lunch? And you're like,
hey, you!
Young man, sit down.
No, he was there. But what you're saying about seeing people mature and blossom and become something is a lot more important than what color the walls are, huh?
100%.
Here's a question off the top of my head. If I were to say there are seasons and passages to that church over a 10-year window. Yeah. Walk us through, because you did a phenomenal job there, and so I'm excited to watch that. But how would you, 4 seasons, 3, it was about this and this. Walk us through that journey.
So I was pretty conscious of that journey when we started. I mean, I've told everybody, so we're in a consolidation phase. Like, that was the first phase that we had, was just to go through everything we do, look for the things that are good and try to get them better, look for the things we're not doing so great, see if do we need to keep doing them, what's the best way to fix that, just try to consolidate. And that included debts, it included sort of things that were just a big drain on the church, and just giving people permission to say, like, yeah, that's actually a problem, we don't know how to fix it. I said, great, we don't have an answer,
right?
But we've labeled it, we're going to put it on the wall.
Okay.
That's the problem. We'll fix that later. And then the next phase, so that happened for about 2 years. And I was pretty conscious of the fact when that 2 years was coming up that, all right, I think we're good. And one of the things that was helping me see that was, like, we had paid down all of our debt in that 2 years. The church stabilized in numbers. It stopped being just a big, giant fluctuation all the time. It just sort of became more stable. Our youth ministry started just incrementally getting a little bit better, and then same with kids. And all, like, you look around, everything you look at and think, how's the family doing? And the family was okay. Nobody's bleeding.
Right.
Everybody's at the dinner table. All right, we did it. And then the next phase after that consolidation was to really sort of dream a bit. We spent some time thinking about who we would like to be, where we'd like to go. And a lot of that was more about character and who did we see ourselves as a people becoming? Less about, hey, we want a new building, or we want to do this, or
Right.
go play, because that stuff's, I mean, people like to talk about it, but it doesn't actually result in any sort of goodness for the church. It's not what the church is. You know that. The church is not a building, and we need a building. It helps. Doing what we do outdoors would be challenging if we did it every week, especially in Oregon.
That'd be ugly in the winter.
That'd be a problem. So, we had that sort of dreaming phase, and it was a lot shorter. So the consolidation was about 2 years. The dreaming thing was, maybe 9 months.
Okay.
And then it was like, let's go.
Okay.
So, because I don't spend a lot of time blue sky. Once we've done our blue sky thinking, it's like, well, we know what we should be doing. Let's get started. Like, let's pick some projects and let's just start chewing through them. And so that one was more about giving the people of the church permission to start taking on some tasks. And because we didn't have a lot of cash, we couldn't hire people to do a lot of things. So we just trained up a lot of volunteers to do everything. And that was great. It was a lot of fun. And it was a high energy time. And it was about in that phase, that third phase, that it was like, okay, I'm going to drop the hammer on everybody. We're going to shoot big, and we need to rebuild this building.
Wow.
And because it's no longer serving its purpose and its function, and it's a detriment to the health of the church. And it really was. I mean, like, for example, if you walked your kids, your family, a young family comes to church and they walk in the building, they would have to leave the building, go out in the rain, walk down a big long thing by a road and in the rain the whole time to get their kids to kids church, and reverse do the same thing to get them back out. And we were just like, we can do better than this. And it's not just build a walkway. We did that, and we realized like the whole place needs an overhaul. And that's when we really started getting thick into some heavy growth. So that was about 10 years in, and things were going great. And then obviously, we had the same stuff that happened with COVID, and that shut everything down, except for the building stuff. That actually doubled, and we were able to accomplish that, twice as fast for less money. And so that once we were able to have people back in the building, that church grew. In fact, it nearly doubled in size in terms of numbers of people through the COVID experience.
Wow.
And I think a lot of it just had to do with all that hard work we did as a family leading into it. We kept saying over and over that, church is not a thing. Church is not an event. Church is not a substance. We're a family. We're the family of Christ. And you need to be with your family. So find a way. We're going to find a way to meet together. We're going to find a way to be together. We're not going to just do everything virtually for the rest of time. Like, that's not what Jesus came for. He came for us to be together. So we got creative. We found ways to make that happen. And I think a lot of the other churches around us were afraid of regulations and rules that weren't even real.
Right.
It was in their head. They just thought, oh, we can't do this. And you're like, well, says who? Let's go. And that was the mentality I think that God blessed, and that church just exploded. And we were running 4 services, and we were doing more than we could handle. And it's finally got, that we went back into another phase of consolidation after that. It was like,
for sure,
let's find a way to meet this new need and start the growth process again. And that's when it sort of triggered for me that I think it's time for the next person.
All right.
I've done all these phases and we're about to start all over again. I think somebody else should do that. You're going to get the same vision from me over and over. That's how it felt.
Right.
I know that's probably not true, but it's certainly how it appeared. And the more we prayed about it, the more we thought about it, it was just obvious that we felt like, no, this is great. It's somebody else's job to take the church where it needs to go next. We're free to make our own decision. And that's what led us back to the States. Okay.
Totally different question, but about you. In 25 years of ministry, what is the most recent spiritual new discovery about the walk with Jesus that you didn't know 25 years ago?
Well, nothing's new.
Okay.
Right? That's the kicker. Every time someone says, I've got something new from the Bible, or like, nah, not really, you didn't, but maybe it was new to you. It's something so basic and so ordinary that it's not inspiring, but it is just this constant steady drip like a Chinese water torture on my forehead that it is all about faithfulness to God. Like everything in my life needs to be faithful. And that means a lot of different things in different circumstances, but it's just the mantra that has become, it's just gripped me in this last 18 months that is all I actually care about. If I'm being faithful to God, well, then it doesn't matter. I can do whatever job I need to do. I can go where I need to go. God's got this. It's under control. And we've been through some crazy stuff over this last 8 months where we've not known what's coming next, and we've had no jobs, and we've not even had a place to live. We've been borrowing, rooms from people, and you think, is this really the life that God called you to? Yeah, it is. We were faithful to Him through the whole process. I didn't see the end, but I knew that we were, as a family, we were right where we needed to be. And that's something I would not have, no way would I have been okay with that 25 years ago. No chance. I mean, I was freaked out every time something just shifted in our world. It was like, oh my gosh, that's it. It's the end of everything. Sell it all. We're destitute. We're never going to make it. When I was at seminary, we had just gotten married. I was making $1,000 a month. And then we had a baby. I was like, well, no one's ever going to eat. We're never going to have clothes. That's it. It's all done. And my wife was the one that was just, she had the faith, and she just kept saying, just relax. Trust God. It's going to work out. And that lesson that she was trying to teach me then, I think it took me a lot longer to learn than she certainly picked it up a lot quicker than me. And now I see it. Now I'm like, I would tell you.
Well, here's the good news for you. You learned it in 25, or the deeper. It took me 50 to get to that deeper. So props to you. All right. 1,500 sermons. You took this one.
Right.
Okay. And of that 1,500, you could have picked any of them. You chose this one. It's an obvious question, but what of all the sermons and all the adaptations of John 4,
all the bars and all
you had to walk into this one. Why this one?
Oh, I wrestled with this for a long time because it has to be a bit of me,
Yep.
which is something I don't normally like.
Yeah.
But that's necessary considering, hello, I just got here, and it needed to be clear about our purpose and our mission as a people, as a church, where I would want to lead people to. And for me, really getting into the issue of, well, Jesus has His mission, and He's given His mission to us. What does that look like for us? That's a good place to get started from. And I like this passage specifically because I really think most of the teaching is applicable to the modern church. It's a one-for-one. You don't have to go through any sort of mental gymnastics to think like, I think that applies to me too.
Right.
And
so you asked a question early that I'm going to change it a bit. Why do you think Christians stay at the well and don't go back to the city to tell?
Oh, well, because I wouldn't. For real, if you were Jesus Christ and we were having a conversation and there's a lull in the conversation, I'm not going to just be like, well, see ya. I'm going to walk off now. I mean, I'm going to stay there because that's where I want to be. I'd be like Peter going, hey, let's build some tabernacles and let's stay on this mountain. Let's enjoy this moment.
So why did she go when you and I would have stayed?
I don't know. Because she's better than us. I mean, she certainly took the message of Christ to heart instantly, went to her circle of influence and spread Jesus amongst all those people. I mean, and it must have been such a significant change in her countenance and her even appearance that they were like, oh,
right.
Okay, this guy told you everything you've ever done, but look at you. There's something radically different about you that is better. Like,
yeah,
let's go. I mean,
when you were saying that, the two thoughts I had were the transformation that had begun in her life was radical enough to want to go tell somebody. Yeah. And my other thought as you spoke is that I think she must have sensed that Jesus came to seek us out and to share the gospel, and his purpose and meaning was so rich in that moment. The incarnation of going through Samaria and the cross and talking to a woman in the middle of the day. She must have sensed God as a seeking God and said, I've got to play this out of my own life and not just leave it for him.
Well, I mean, there's that idea that, those who have been forgiven little love little, those who have been forgiven a lot love a lot. She'd been forgiven for a lot in that situation.
Yeah.
And I think that change, for some people, that change is radically obvious to everyone around them. For other people, it's a subtle shift where it's like, I'll take that to heart. I'll try to apply that with my family and friends. I'll try to be, more like Christ tomorrow with my wife and kids, because that's what they needed, and that's where they're at in their walk. For others, it's I need to turn away from an entire life, an addiction. I need to step out of this whole world that I've been living in, and Jesus is calling me into a different world, and so that is tremendously obvious. And perhaps that's the difference between you and I and the woman at the well.
Right.
We might be more, hopefully, let's hope. If there's no hope for us, then there's no hope for anybody, but we might be in a place where we might be able to say, the shift that needs to take place in my heart it's just as significant, but it's maybe not as radical a spin of the wheel on the ship, right? It's a course correction as opposed to a whole new path.
Well, 25 years for you, 50 for me, we've both seen people who are most deeply touched are always the people most willing to take the risk to go back to the city.
Yeah.
I love you had a great phrase of lifting up our eyes and not having our head down where we become lunch. I was sitting there thinking, oh, Father, may people get what Ryan's really saying in living a life where our eyes are up and we can see the harvest coming.
Yeah.
Say more.
Well, I mean, look, everyone wants to be, so it's going to be so terrible over this next 18 months, right? We got a presidential election, and the news cycle's crazy. Every time you think about anything, there's 20 people arguing on a zillion sides. I mean, it's a mess out there. And we get caught up in the trap, and it is a trap. And we're stuck there. And while we might feel deeply about some of the positions that everybody's taking all around us, we're not called to any of those things. That's not our calling from Christ. Our calling from Christ is to receive the people that he is calling to himself, to show them love, mercy, grace. That's the purpose of the church. The church is to receive the people that God brings to us and to help them get to know Jesus. Yeah, along the way, that's going to, we're going to push back on some of their ideas, and we're going to help correct some of the things that they want help with. And I think we miss out on all that if we are spending all of our time looking at the decay around us, looking at the problems in the world around us, and pretending as if that is insurmountable and that that's all that there is and that all hope is lost. And there's a lot of Christians living in that world right now where they feel like, well, everything has changed. Everything has shifted. The whole world is different. Yeah, of course it is. It's like that every decade. I mean, I grew up in the 80s when we had nuclear bomb test, drills in San Antonio. You'd have to go sit in the hallway with your head between your knees for like an hour, and then they'd be like, "Okay, you all survived. Go back to class."
Right.
And at that time of life, you would think, "Oh my gosh, this is the worst thing that could ever happen. It's the end of the world." If you had stayed in that environment, stay with your head between your knees in the hallway, think of what you've missed out on life. Think about how you don't serve the Lord like he's calling you to. You miss out on the joy of that, the excitement of being a part of his mission. And it's no different today. I mean, okay, so there's AI and there's streaming and there's phones and there's, the war that's always going to rage around the world. There's all this, rot and decay. You could spend all of your time focusing on that stuff. And a lot of people do.
Yeah, my take with 100% with you, is it's all fog that people find themselves in, and they miss the divine appointments throughout a day where God brings people into our lives, not by accident, divine appointments. And I know it has to grieve you. It grieves me that how many of us miss those divine moments because we're either looking at our phone or the TV, or we're angry and we don't see the clerk, the employee, the friend as someone who God has drawn into our life, not just into our lives, but into our life that day.
Yeah. I think of it in terms of like that sphere of influence. I mean, wherever you are, there's always a sphere of influence around you. Mm-hmm. You can pretend like it's not real, like I do on the airplane. All right, I'll be honest. Get on an airplane, put your headphones on. That means don't talk to me. I just want to chill. And how many of conversations have I missed because I've bought into that too. You just get focused on the stuff right in front of you, and you're not. Jesus is telling his guys. He said they're sitting there around this well, and he's going, "Lift your head up, man. Look at all these people. Do you see them? They're coming to us, and you, not just me, you are going to engage with them. It's not my job. I'm going to work through you guys. That's what you're here for."
How do you think we can help our people not miss the depth of what you're trying to teach in terms of this week?
Who knows?
No,
yeah. How do you help them?
Because it's a great, profound truth.
Yeah.
I mean, the meaning and the purpose behind it, the not being thirsty all day long, but having meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
Most Christians miss it.
It's true. Yeah, and it is true that the world is a mess. The world is messy, and we are afraid of the guy next door when there's raised voices, and you're thinking, "Oh, should I go see if they're okay? Should I intervene? Well, what if it gets out of hand?" And you're just like, so I'm just going to stay at home and watch Netflix, turn the TV up a little louder,
right? Because
that's easier. But I mean, our model, Jesus, didn't live an easy life, and I don't think we're called to that either. And I know where I have failed in that area, but I know that the times where I've not failed, where I have listened to that nudge of the Spirit, and I have gone next door and had that conversation. And in fact, it led to those people next door coming to my church. They got saved, and I did their wedding, and we worked through all kinds of issues with them, stuff that I would have missed completely if I had just been like, "Oh, I can't get involved. That's too personal."
Right. And I wonder if people leapfrog, like they go from one of indifference to 100. My encounter with all those lost people has to include the gospel in that moment, as opposed to just being a caring friend, a neighbor who takes over cupcakes with no agenda, an invitation for dinner with no manipulation. I think I agree. It's either or as opposed to both and every step is a journey.
I mean, it's again, like I was saying today, it's God's job to draw people into a place of faith and repentance. That's his job.
Okay.
That's the work of the Spirit.
Takes a lot of pressure off us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's the one drawing those people in that environment. Like, it was Jesus that caused that town to come out to see Jesus.
Right.
The disciples didn't have anything to do with that.
Right.
And just realizing that in those moments when you're with the people God brings to you, you have to trust what Jesus teaches us. He says, in those moments, trust the Spirit. Right? The Spirit will lead. He'll give you the words. He'll help you with this process. You're not on your own. This isn't really about you. It's about me. If they reject what you're saying, fine. They're not rejecting you. They're rejecting me. Again, it's not about you. It's about me. And just helping people realize that. And if you're open to, if they want to talk about Jesus, I'm ready. Are you ready in season and out of season? Are you prepared to give the reason for the hope that you have within you? I mean, if you're ready for that, man, God's just going to open the doors at the right time, the right place. But you wouldn't want to, if you go give them cupcakes, you don't need to go give cupcakes that spell out the gospel presentation.
Right. Different word on the 12 cupcakes, right?
Oh my gosh. Just relax. Be a loving human being to those people. And trust that God will draw them to himself, and he'll use you in lots of different ways to make that happen. But you won't get there, again, if you're so focused on the minutia of the world around us. And the decay that we're seeing everywhere. I mean, it is a trap, and you get stuck in it. So, I mean, to your point, like, what can we do about it?
Yeah.
Well, that's the function of preaching. I mean, it is the function of the act of preaching is to proclaim truth over God's people in a way that wakes people up. Even if it's truth they've known and they've heard a million times, sometimes we lose sight of it, and you need somebody to come along and say, wake up, come on, like, lift up your eyes. The disciples knew. It wasn't like, oh, really, Jesus?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, we'd never thought of that. It was like, oh, yeah, that's right. These people are important to you, to Jesus. So now they're important to us. So, I mean, yeah, we need to hear it. We need to preach to ourselves. We need to be preached to. We need to,
Right.
You know.
One of your closing statements was looking up to Jesus in this journey of harvest and people being drawn. So not only looking at the harvest, but looking at Jesus. Say more on that in life.
Well, I mean, we need role models. We need people to look to. I mean, the Apostle Paul was way more daring than I to say, you know, you follow me as I follow Christ. I understand that that's a function of a pastor, of a minister, of a leader, of a father, and I get it. That's something that God does through us. I've never been so brave as to say that to somebody, but it is true. You need people to look to. You need people that are living out that example, that Christ-like example. You know, and where do those leaders look? Well, they look to each other, but we all need to be focusing on the model that Jesus sets. I mean, his model, just in this John 4 passage, I mean, his model is shocking. Like what he does with this woman and having this theological conversation with her. I mean, she starts arguing, well, you guys say you should worship in Jerusalem, and we say we should worship here. What do you think is right? And he's like, well, the Jews are right, but none of that matters because in the future people are going to worship in spirit and truth. And he's telling her deep theological truths, and he respects her, and he gives her truth, answers her questions, but doesn't hide it from her. If it hurts her feelings, well, that's her fault. That's on you, you know, and he does that. And then he turns around and invites her into this, if you know who I was, you would receive the gift of eternal life, not just water, you know, and invites her into that change of heart and nature. And like looking at the example of Jesus, just in this woman at the well, John 4 teaches you so many things that we should be modeling, you know. Example, they stayed in Samaria for 2 days after this.
Great truth.
I mean, these Jewish men surrounding Jesus would have freaked out. They're not even allowed to be there in their minds.
Yeah.
Like, you know, God doesn't want us to associate with these people. They're despicable. I mean, they're cousins, and it's just it's a silly, man-made, worldly thing that had been dropped on them, and they needed to see Jesus' example of saying, "Oh yeah, well, we're going to live in their village for a couple of days, and you're going to get to know them for real. And if you will keep your eyes on me, watch what I do what I do when we're with them, you're going to grow."
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like, I can't physically look at Jesus. I get that. But I can take, say, for example, this situation, and I can learn a lot about how Jesus did behave and how he would like for me to behave, how he'd like for me to treat people. I mean, there's a lot we could see by looking to him.
Paul Little, as you know, wrote How to Give Away Your Faith, and he does a great job with John 4 as a pattern for evangelism and lifestyle. We got a couple of minutes left. Here we go. Any fears about the next couple of months?
This next, for me personally, from now to the end of August is a whirlwind. There's all this moving in, getting to know everybody, you know, running from place to place. My family's going to be in here, and I want them to get to know the church and to get to see the valley, so that they fall in love with it.
Right.
That's my.
I knew. I figured that.
You know, so there's all that, and then there's, you know, running back to get them all set up in their lives so that they don't feel like their parents have abandoned them, and then, you know, coming back and doing my doctorate stuff. I mean, there's just like so much happening. I don't know if I have time to be afraid of much.
Got it.
You just gotta take a deep breath and do the next thing.
Myers-Briggs, you know that? that test?
It's been 20 years since I've looked at it.
Extrovert or introvert?
Oh, always. I'm an extrovert.
Do you make decisions based on data or intuition?
Intuition.
Do you spend more time in your head or your heart?
Head.
And are you, I already know this about you, and I hardly, do you like closure or do you like things open-ended?
Well, that's an interesting one.
Okay.
Right. The way I de-stress, the way I can carry a very heavy load, but as long as I'm taking things and completing them. As long as I see completion from time to time, and that's how I de-stress. So the minute something's done, it's like it never was a problem in my life, and it just vanishes.
Okay.
But when I close all the loops, right, when I tick all the boxes, I'm miserable. Right? I need things to be open. I need to see that the road's going to keep going. There's a new path. There's new things to worry about. I mean, it's a sickness.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, it's a sickness.
Hey, great job again tonight. I know the people are already falling in love with you. You're going to have a great ride here. I believe God's going to do, I can envision in my head the things that God's going to do here in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's all good.
Well, we're all in it together.
We are. I'm going to pray.
Okay, let's do it.
Father, I thank you for bringing Ryan here. I thank you for what he brings to this church at this point. I know his heart. I know his confidence. I know his mind. Not totally, but the part I see is gorgeous and strong and confident, and we will see you do great things. So be with Amy. I thank you that Ryan's here. May he experience something so rich and so meaningful and so led by your Spirit that at the end of a week, at the end of a month, he will in his heart say, I've been as faithful as I can be.
Yes,
and so we pray protection and a blessing upon him and his family. We thank you for this day. May we encounter people as divine appointments that you brought into our lives to do incremental things with them, that somehow they might see Jesus for who he is. And we pray these things in his name. Amen.
Amen.
Good to have you, bro.
Thank you.
We're glad you're here. We'll have many more of these in the days to come. Have a great afternoon or evening, whenever time it is that you're watching this. Take care.